Canning proteins has to be one of my favorite things to do. Shelf-stable meat, shelf-stable real food. I don't have to worry about having the freezer go out. I don't have to worry about power outages, which happens a lot here. I don't have to worry because it's cooked, it's good, it's real, and it's on my shelf. And so keeping that inventory up is a priority to me. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sutton's Days. If you're new here, my name is Lisa, and we're all about pantry preparedness with a heavy lean towards home canning. We do only safe and approved methods because there's enough things out there trying to kill you. Your food shouldn't be one of them. Now, ground beef. We got some ground beef. Not an epic deal, but better than what I've seen lately for sure. And I wanted to make sure to get a little bit of it and put it on the shelves. And that's what we're going to do today. 10 pounds of ground beef going into the canner. Well, not into the canner. It's going into jars and then it's going into the canner. But first it's going into a pot. You'll see the whole process. Let's get started. The internet, being what it is, will tell you that you can raw pack ground beef. And I'm here to tell you, you absolutely cannot, okay? So don't do it. It is super dense that way. And you cannot guarantee that the proper amount of heat is getting to the center of the jar as needed. And I need a knife. I need a knife. Normally I wouldn't spend so much time on this, but you know, when you buy in bulk, sometimes they put these metal staples on there. I hate those things, but they do work really good. So we are going to can up some ground beef. You must par cook the ground beef, okay? And when I say par cook, there we go. What I mean is you're not going to make it well done, you know? You're going to get it so that it's not red anymore. And that's about it. Because I am on propane gas, I have put a little bit of water in the bottom of the pan just to make sure that it doesn't get too done. It helps cook it also. You can also boil the ground beef if that's what you want to do. No problem there. But we're going to take some time and get this cooked up so that we can fill the jars. Now, the purpose of this is that's the way that it was tested. So they know that the right amount of heat got into the center of the jar and that with it being cooked, that it also allowed it to get into the center of the jar, into the meat, so that it kills off anything, you know, that might not be good for us. And at some point, somebody's gonna say, I have always raw packed burger. Okay, I've done it too, and I'm telling you, it's not worth it. It's really not worth it. Definitely do it the right way, and you will save time and potentially hospital bills at the end. I will have a link down below for the National Center for Home Food Preservation, okay? And that is where I got the information for canning ground beef so that you can go over it also. You need a pressure canner. You cannot water bath can this. I don't care what anybody says. And that's the way that you make it right. Now, you can have a lot of fun with this, though. Don't think that it's boring, because it's not. When you go through and read this, which is not difficult, okay, it's just a very short paragraph, it says that you can do ground meat, ground pork, ground venison, ground beef, and you can also do freshly made sausage. Oh, so good, right? But sausage in general. You just want to look at the ingredients and make sure there's no fillers in there, like they do with commercially made meatballs, right? There's a filler in there. It's not just meat. So you don't want that, but you just want the meat. You're going to cook it until lightly browned, and that's any ground meat. And then you can actually, if you wanted, you could take that ground beef and make it into sausage patties or into meatball, or sausage patties, into hamburger patties or into meatballs, but you just can't add a filler. So as long as you're good with that, then you're good. No egg, no dairy, no bread, you know, no grains, then just meat, and shape it any way that you want. And you can can it that way too. It doesn't have to be loose ground beef. I find though that like the ground burger, like making a burger, I did it with sausage patties. I was so disappointed because, and I don't know any other way to explain this, but meat, fresh meat, when you cook it, ground like this, as you cook it, the meat binds itself together, okay? And that way, like when you bite into it, you're getting that pull. You know, there's a tension there because it has woven itself together. When you make a hamburger patty or even a meatball, now the meatballs I like, hamburger patties, not so much. The ground beef is pattied up raw, okay? And then you're going to brown it on each side until it's just brown, not until it's, you know, well done. And then you're going to take it and put it in the jars, and then you're going to add liquid. So essentially, what you end up doing is boiling the patties or the meatballs. And it loses that weave, that tension, so that it just kind of crumbles. It's something that's missing texture-wise, and I'm not a very particular texture kind of person, but when I bite into a burger, I want it to feel like a burger, you know, and it just kind of crumbles. I was really disappointed in it. For a meatball, I think it's just fine. I'm not expecting that kind of thing out of a meatball, but hamburgers, yeah. Sausage patties, no. So that is another thing to look for. You don't have to make it just loose. You can shape it and, you know, lightly brown it, but keep your expectations in check. That's going to be a big one because it would really not be good to can up, you know, 50 pounds of ground beef into patties and then discover you can't stand the texture. It's not good. A lot of people also have issues with the texture of loose ground beef canned because they feel like it's soggy. I drain it. There's not that much water or liquid in it. You can do broth, tomato juice, water, you know, but there's not that much liquid in it. It's just enough liquid so that the heat reaches the center of the jar. It's like a conduit, okay? So that's how that part works. But I drain it for what it's worth or cook it off. I put it into a pan, you know, like a cast iron pan or a stainless steel pan, or if you still use Teflon, then a Teflon pan, and just cook it off and crisp it up. It's great. I use it for tacos. I use it for soups, which you're cooking it in liquid anyway. Chilies, stews, you know, goulash, all of that kind of stuff. It's gonna be wet at that point anyway. So any discrepancy there, I think, is something that people are imagining because it's in their head that it's boiled canned ground beef, you know? But I know a lot of people still have sensitivity towards it. So if you've never tried it before, I would recommend only doing a few jars and testing it out. And I also recommend not telling anybody before you do, okay? It won't hurt them if you can it right. So make that favorite recipe like spaghetti or chili or whatever using home canned ground beef, and dime to a dollar says nobody's going to know the difference. I don't know if you can hear that. We're going to go stir it up so it doesn't burn and kind of clean up and get ready. That didn't take very long at all. So I'm going to take the pot with the ground beef off the burner. This is just my setup. You know, however your setup works, be careful. And I'm going to bring the canning pot over onto the heat and get it warming up. I'm also going to fill up my teapot so that I can get hot water ready for when I have the jars full. I have the teapot on. I have my pot of ground beef. Here, let me show you that. That is the ground beef. Now you can see, first of all, it was 80-20, okay? So there is fat in that liquid and there's water in that liquid. And that's okay. Not a problem. Sorry, I'm steaming you up here. I'm breaking it up so that there's not huge chunks, you know? And what we're going to do now, I have my clean jars, 4 jars, you guys. These jars are, look at, they're squared off. They're cute. They're so cute. And they're nice, thick, heavy glass. You just know they're going to be around for a long time. In addition to that, the 4 jars canner, or the 4 jars funnel, and then the 4 jars canner. Yes, it's 4 jars. I love this company. I love that they have provided us with what we want and what we need in order to be successful. Canning, that's the key right there. I'll have links down below. And remember, if you use the code SUTTONS10, you get 10% off. It's a great way to save money. So now we are going to fill the jars to 1-inch headspace. 1-inch headspace, let me show you this real quick. 1-inch headspace. The general rule is that bottom ring right there, okay? That is the standard 1-inch. And then it's half, and then it's quarter. So if you don't have a measuring tool, which I don't know that I have one handy in my plethora of jars. I do. There we go. Okay. You can also get these tools that will tell you which they are, you know, also. So you know that if it goes down to there, 1 inch, you know, so that works too. This can also be used as a pokem stabber to debubble, which you're going to have to do, especially with the ground beef. So let me bring you up here. So I filled, you know, to what I thought was 1 inch headspace. The funnel is still in there. And now I'm just going to beat it into submission to, quote, debubble it. Okay, but it also gets it down in there. What I'm hoping you can see is that there's liquid in that jar. There is liquid in there, but it's not full, but it is a little bit. We're going to be topping that off when we're done with all of them. The liquid in the jar is literally the liquid in the pot. That does not have to be the case. If you don't want that fat in there, then don't. Okay, drain it through a strainer, put it in the jar, and then add your liquid. I don't care. It's not that much fat, and it's significantly watered down because I added probably about 2 inches of water to the bottom of the pot when I started cooking it, just to expedite the cooking process and to keep it from sticking on the bottom of the pot. So I can either bring up the meat just a little bit more on this, but honestly, I'm just going to add the water to the 1 inch headspace, and that one will be good to go. And that is the key there. You want to make sure that the contents, period, do not exceed 1 inch. Because then you're dealing with siphoning and all that other fun stuff, okay? And that doesn't make for super successful canning most of the time. And if you overfill it, it's not a big deal. You can always just grab a spoon and scoop some of it out, you know? Stuff happens. But I've always kind of liked the fact that, like this one is too full. That's too full. So I'm going to do that. Yep, and bring it down. And yeah, I got stuff on the side of it. Okay, we're going to run, you know, vinegar around it anyway, so it's not a big problem. Another reason why I like adding the liquid to the meat as I'm cooking it is because I may not need that boiling pot of water, because I'm scooping it out of the pot as is with the ground beef. Not necessarily intentionally, it's just kind of coming with it, you know? And so some of them I may have to add water, some of them I may not. But either way, this should net us, because if it was 10 pounds of ground beef, it should net us about 10 pint jars. The thing is something about, like, you know, a pint's a pound the world around. There's some rhyme, I don't know. And no, it's not exactly accurate, and somebody will correct me and be all snotty about it, but I don't pay attention to that. So it's just a neat thing to remember, because then you know when you're doing recipes, that's about a pound of ground beef in there. That's about a pound of canned chicken in there, you know. I need a spoon. Okay, so if you overfill it, sometimes it's just easier to grab, and the jar is hot because the meat is hot, so be careful. Sometimes it's just easier to spoon it out and get it down to where it's got to be. Now, while I'm leaving room for this, I'm going to add a little bit. There is liquid in here. I'm going to add a little bit of liquid. I don't want to exceed that 1 inch. So you want to pay attention to that also when you're adding, you know, the meat, because you want to make sure that you can add some liquid to it. Don't overthink it. That's probably the easiest advice I can give you. Don't overthink it. Just by the time it goes into the canner, you want to make sure that your headspace is 1 inch. And if you have less ground beef than a full jar, that's okay, because you can add whatever liquid you're using to bring it up to that inch headspace. That's the cool part. Unlike ugly chicken, you know, raw packing beef or chicken or pork, raw packing it, that doesn't work that way. You have to have that inch headspace. But when you're hot packing, which is what this method is, then it's easy to make up that headspace if you don't have quite enough meat, which I thought was kind of a handy thing to know, so that you're not driving yourself crazy trying to get it all in there. Okay, I'm going to get these jars filled, and the canner is heating up. So you want to make sure your canner's heating up, because the meat in this, if you can't tell from the steam, is hot. The liquid in it or being added to it is going to be hot. So you want to make sure that the water in your canner is hot, because thermal shock is a thing and it is not fun, okay? It can be dangerous if you're not careful. So we're just going to keep plugging away at this, and I'm moving a little slow with my arm. So I want to make sure not to hurt myself and go backwards. Okay. We'll see how many jars I get. I filled up 11 jars. There's this tiny bit left in here. Quite honestly, the puppies are going to have a happy dinner. Now that we have that all figured out, right? I have to add liquid to this one. And let's see, I'm trying to adjust headspace, because if you put in too much and the headspace is not enough, then you can have siphoning, okay? If you put in too little headspace, then it's not safe, because part of the math for the canning process is the headspace. The time needed for like everything to get the heat into the center of the jar for the right amount of time to kill off any organisms, right? And to vacate any excess air above the headspace. So if your headspace is 1 inch and you go under 1 inch, then the timing is not correct for the processing to make sure that all of the air gets out of there, because the timing is factored on 1 inch headspace. The whole thing is a math equation, which is enough to drive a person a little bit crazy. Okay, now I'm going to take my hot water and top off that. I mean, it's literally like nothing. You probably get out of the entire jar 1/8 of a cup to 1/4 cup of liquid. It's remarkably little. I'm using vinegar to wipe the rims, because that's me. Because of the fat and because of the fact that I am a sloppy canner, okay? Sloppy canner. I prefer vinegar because it cleans off the rim of the jar. It will not impact the compound on your jar at all, or on your lid at all. People sit around and just make up stuff to try to drive canners crazy. It will not impact the compound on your lids. So please don't worry about it, okay? But we want to take that and get it clean. You can use water. You don't have to use vinegar. You can absolutely use water. And the deal is to get any of the debris, whether that is meat, whether that is oil, fat, whatever, you want it off the rim of that jar, because you want a good, clean seal with the lid. And this is the way that we ensure that that happens. And if siphoning happens, but it still seals, you're okay, it's sealed. If siphoning happens and it doesn't seal, that means that some serious stuff got in between the lid and the jar, and so it didn't seal. That is one of the side effects of siphoning, and another reason why we want to make sure that our headspace is where it's supposed to be. Now it's time for the lids, and you guys know 4 Jars lids are my favorite lids for 5 years now. They are what I use exclusively. They have an amazing compound, a nice thick compound. These lids are awesome. The only failures that I have run into with these lids are self-imposed, because I have forgotten something or not done something correctly, and it happens. It always it happens. But then the rings, and you want to put them on finger tight. Let me back up the camera so you can see that better. Okay, you want to put them on finger tight. That means you go until they stop moving. That's it. You're not cranking it on, because that does not leave it so that the excess air can vacate the jar, and that is important. So make sure that you don't over tighten it, because when it goes to vacate that air, what will happen is it will cause the lid to buckle, and that is not an optimal outcome either. But you also don't want to put it on too loose because then it may not adhere right either. Don't overthink it, okay? Just put it on there until it stops moving. You're not putting any pressure on it. You know, if it makes a difference, use just your thumb and your index finger to do it, but whatever works. And these happen to be new rings with new jars, but you do not have to have pearly beautiful rings, even though they are gorgeous, right? Because rings tarnish over time. It does take less or longer time for 4 jars rings to tarnish because they made them that way, which is awesome. But if your rings are ugly, slightly tarnished, whatever, as long as they go on, you're fine. It's not an engagement ring, it is a tool. If you expect a hammer to look brand spanking new every time you go to use it, you are, you know, going to be very unhappy, because a good tool is a tool that's used, and a used tool does not look new. We're going to get these in the canner. The canner has been heating up. It's hot. You can see the steam coming out of it. So very carefully, we are going to place the hot jars with the hot contents into the canner. There's 11 jars, so I'm probably going to have to grab my other rack to double stack. So that's what I'm going to do. Ta-da! And rack number 2. I have my extra rack in there, and that is where I am going to put the last 3 jars. Okay, you can hear the bubble, 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 bubble. Now we're going to put the lid on and turn it until you can't turn it anymore. With the 4 jars canner, it's pretty cool because there's a locking mechanism in the lid. And do you hear that? I mean, it's hot enough that it's already putting a little bit of steam, but we're gonna wait until it's venting a steady stream of steam out of there, and then we're gonna set our timer for 10 minutes. Okay, it has been venting a steady stream of steam. I don't know if you can you see it? I don't know if you can, but if you cannot see it, all you have to do is grab an old lid, go right there. But I also rely on an audible, you know, I can hear that it's a steady stream of steam even if I can't see it. We've been venting for 10 minutes, so we're gonna put the weighted regulator on there. When the weighted regulator starts to do a hula dance, we're gonna pay attention. If it goes too fast, like it's trying to do the jig, then you wanna turn down your heat a little bit. You just want it to do a nice, slow and steady hula. And when it gets up to that, when it starts doing the hula dance, that's when you start your timer. And we're going to do this for 75 minutes because it's pints. If you do it in 1.5 jars or in quarts, you're doing it for 90 minutes. We'll see you when they come out. The canner has completely depressurized on its own. It ran the 75 minutes, and then we turned the heat off, and it completely depressurized. Now, it is not super chilly in the house because I closed the windows, but it's still cooler than what it is in the canner. So we just tilt the lid off for a minute, kind of let it slowly, gradually come to the same temperature, because otherwise you can end up with a whole bunch of siphoning. And that is not a whole bunch of fun. Okay, so we're gonna start pulling these out, and we have the 3 on top. Dun, dun. Okay. And they're a bubbling and a troubling. And then we're gonna get I have something here to help me get that. Don't I? Yes, okay. Let me get that rack out. There we go. I'll just set it right here. And we will pull out the rest of these so that you can see. And then I have 11 pints of ground beef that tomorrow I can put up on the shelf after I wash the jars and label them. You want to make sure after 24 hours, if they've sealed, you'll know then, okay, that you go through and you wash the jars. Just put them in some warm, not hot, sudsy water. Kind of run it, you know, over there, wipe them down really quick, put them up, dry them, and then label them. And that way anything that may have siphoned is not on the outside of the jar. It's just another way to try to keep any unwanted visitors from coming on board. And then look at all the bubbles. We have bubbles. Yes, we do. Now, the bubbles in there is not a 100% sure sign that they are going to succeed, but it's a pretty good hint, okay? And that's just because everything in there is hot. It's hot. Oh, did you hear the ping? We got a ping. So these are the ground beef. So I know a few of you said that you were doing ground beef here soon and you wanted to see this, so I hope that it is helpful. And I hope that you enjoy canning your ground beef. It is shelf stable. It doesn't get any better than that. And if we can catch the sales, that's the kicker. That is when it is the best price to put it in a jar, put it on your shelf, and use it in the days coming when it's not so inexpensive anymore. If you want to see more videos on canning different kinds of meat, check out this playlist. And until next time, everybody, be safe. Keep stacking it to the rafters, my friends.